To moja Norwegia. Welcome to our seminar about Polish migration in Norway. The seminar is organized by internet portal Mojanorwegia in cooperation with the Polish Embassy here in Oslo, with Polish Connection, my call, PKS Oslo and Through. Today we want to present some latest research about Polish migration and Polish community here in Norway. We talk about employment, about social mobility, participation in cultural life, integration and transfer future. We have great guests with us today, but first, please welcome the Ambassador of Polish Republic to Norway, Mr. Stefan Szmur. We are very glad to have you. Would you like to say
Good morning, all of you. My name is Stefan Szmur. I would like to underline my name because some, even Poles, have a difficulty to remember my name. That maybe is not bad to say that my name is Stefan Szmur. Distinguished guests, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to open this seminar about the Polish citizens in Norway. The Embassy of the Republic of Poland in Norway is obviously interested in participating in discussion on this subject, and therefore I thank the organizers of the seminar for the invitation. At present, Poles constitute the largest immigrant group in Norway. Statistics do vary significantly, but official figures point to over 77,000 Polish people currently residing in this country. This fact alone implies a wide array of issues to be discussed, ranging from the situation of migrants themselves to their influence, if any, upon the Norwegian political and social life. Future developments in all these areas are of the great interest as well. In this context, the initiative of organizing the present seminar by the website Moja Norwegia was welcomed by the Embassy of the Republic of Poland in Oslo with great enthusiasm, as in the case with most projects that have to do with fostering exchange of views on the subject of Polish citizens in Norway. It is very important that similar discussions are held as often as possible and that Norwegian institutions are engaged in such exchanges of views. I therefore hope that this valuable initiative will be continued. The basis of today's discussion about Polish citizens in Norway is a report on integration of Poles in Norway, including cultural integration, produced by the Mojanorwegia website. Of course, there have already been some very thoughtful and knowledgeable analysis of Polish migration to Norway. They should obviously be taken into account while discussing the situation of Polish migrants in Norway. Let me mention just two such analyses. In 2011, the nuclear researcher Jakub Kozimirski, well, welcome, Mr. Doctor, published in the periodical International Politik an extensive article on the Polish diaspora and Norwegian forest policy. This year, Dr. Jon Holgen Friberg from the FAFO Institute, who is one of the panelists in today's discussion, published his PhD dissertation, The Polish Worker in Norway, Emerging Patterns of Migration, Employment and Incorporation after the European Union's Eastern Enlargement. Mention of Polish migrants in Norway we also made in a recent study, Norway and the New World Map, released as part of Ministry of Foreign Affairs project Reflex. The Embassy of the Republic of Poland follows with great interest everything that is written about the Polish citizens in Norway. On a more light note, I can also tell you that the subject has not only attracted scientific attention. In 2011, there has been an opera titled Operation Opera about Polish workers building the Norwegian opera, and this year there has just been published a novel about Polish guest workers in Minnesota. The report on integration of Polish citizens in Norway released by Mojanorwegia shall be presented in greater detail. Before we acquaint ourselves with the result of this report and embark on discussion on the report's conclusion, let me raise some issues that I think may be worth giving attention during today's discussion. Talking about the current migration of Poles to Norway, we were mostly concerned with particular type of movement of people, the labor migration, resulting, as we all know, from Poland's European Union accession in May 2004, that is nearly 10 years ago. We are therefore concerned with a relatively new phenomenon which may account for the fact that, is the opinion of several commentators, Polish migrants have not yet gained significant influence on the Norwegian politics. This is one of the conclusions of the recent study undertaken under the auspices of the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a part of famous reference project to which I allude at the beginning of my speech. The authors of the chapter on migration note, nevertheless, that new incomers from Poland may in the future want to assume a more active role in shaping Norwegian foreign policy. Norway is a very friendly country in terms of approach to foreign nationals living here, and this is borne out by the treatment and support Polish citizens residing in this country receive from relevant Norwegian institutions. It's a fitting opportunity to thank Norway for that. But there is, in fact, more about this. Presence of so many Poles in Norway is a very important component of the Polish-Norwegian political relations, and, as I am happy to hear on numerous occasions meeting by Norwegian colleagues, it is a fact greatly valued by Norway. It is gratifying that the movement of Poles to Norway, to which we devote the present seminar, is coupled, albeit still for smaller measures, with the reserve movement of Norwegian students to Poland, and mostly medicine students. Likewise, it's important and very valuable that EEA and Norwegian funds facilitate cooperation between Polish and Norwegian institutions, administration, and, perhaps most meaningfully, people, not least in the field of culture. By way of example, the opera on Polish construction workers was one of the very many EEA and Norwegian funds projects. These contacts and exchanges of experience that take place during implementation of the EEA and Norwegian funds supported projects unite our societies with each other's and, in further perspective, contribute to the development of the Polish-Norwegian relations. Polish migration to Norway that stems from the European Union enlargement has its distinctive features and is to be held separate from the, for example, migration on political grounds which characterized movement of Polish people to, among others, Norway in the 1980s. As we reflect more generally on the Polish diaspora in Norway, interesting questions may arise with regards to the relation between earlier, mostly political, migrants and those who came to Norway rather recently. As I approach my conclusions, let me raise one more question. The fact that the recent migration of Polish citizens to Norway is primarily motivated by practical reasons of work and related issue of emergence of certain patterns of employment lies in the ground of certain fixed views on typical Polish migrant in Norway. These views, in large part rooted in reality, should nevertheless not constitute the full picture the Polish diaspora in Norway. Apart from greatly valued construction workers and craftsmen, there is a whole range of Polish citizens working in all kinds of Norwegian institutions and companies and successfully participating in Norwegian scientific, political, and social life. In this context, I deeply appreciate the annual contest Outstanding Pole in Norway. I deeply appreciate the annual contest Outstanding Pole in Norway, accords where deserve recognition to these eminent personalities. To give but few examples, the Outstanding Pole in Norway statue has already been awarded to Professor Nina Witoszek, the NUPI researcher Dr. Jakub Kocimirski, and the first Norwegian Olympic medalist in fencing Bartosz Piasecki. As we shall have a panel on the image of Poles in the Norwegian media, it is my firm hope that successive editions of the contest receive higher attention from the Norwegian media. Distinguished guests, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a fruitful discussion and hope that this seminar will be a starting point for more comprehensive and systematic exchange of views on the Polish diaspora in Norway. For the benefit of both Poland and Norway, thank you very much. But I would like to apologize to you because due to my other commitments, unfortunately I must leave you, but there will be my new deputy, Mrs. Małgorzata, and also the others, my colleagues from the Polish embassy. And at the end of my relatively short speech, I would like to say something in our mother language, in Polish. Dzień dobry Państwu. Chciałem serdecznie podziękować za zaproszenie, a jednocześnie zachęcam bardzo wszystkich tutaj obecnych, przedstawicieli różnych organizacji, do zjednoczenia naszego wspólnego wysiłku, tak, żeby Polacy mieli wspólne, jedno, mocne przedstawicielstwo, bo tylko takie pozwoli nam współpracować efektywnie z naszymi przyjaciółmi w Norwegii. Thank you very much.
you very much, Mr. Ambassador. We are very glad to have you here today. Now, we would like to present some latest research about Polish community in Norway. Ms. Aleksandra Janaczyk, sociologist from University in Gdansk, living here in Oslo. She's made her research together with the internet portal Moja.Norwegia. And her analysis are based on interviews with more than 1,000 Polish people living here in Norway. The main topics are participation in cultural life, the level of integration, the use of and knowledge of Norwegian language, and plans for the future. Please welcome Aleksandra.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start presenting results, I would like to say a couple of words about the research itself, about our background, and reasons that made us conduct such a research. Mojanorwegia, which means My Norway, is the biggest info and social web portal for Poles in Norway. They provide news concerning Norway, news concerning immigrants, in this case Polish immigrants in particular. They also provide some other useful information, ads, as well as forum. And as you can see here, they managed to gather big amounts of people around this place. I think that is actually the main forum for Polish people. And when we looked at these numbers, we thought that we could, and we actually should, use the fact that we have access to such a big amount of people. And we decided to conduct a research that would let us and everyone else who could be interested in this subject to get to know the group of Polish people residing in Norway a bit better. Considering the nature of medium, meaning that it is a web portal, as well as the fact that our budget, amount of people and time were limited, we decided to use influence survey, which is a tool supporting a technique called sampling, which in other words means that we published our survey in the internet and we sent a link to it to as many people as we could, and then we asked them to send it further to as many people as they could. I should probably mention some shortcomings of this technique, meaning that we couldn't really control who was filling out the questionnaire, which means that we have to remember that it's not the best possible group in terms of being representative. But still we managed to approach really many people, so we think and we hope that our research is still valuable. Of course, we were and we are aware of the fact that there have been many, probably much more professional research already conducted. But we had this feeling that most of them were focused mainly on one aspect, meaning the work life, which is of course the most important reason for Polish people to come here to Norway. It also is the main, it is the thing that is the center of our being here, the main thing that Norway and Polish people are kind of interested in. But we decided to look at other aspects of life as well, including Polish people as part of bigger society, their integration into Norwegian society, their participation in culture, their social networks, and maybe first and foremost, the Norwegian language. Around 2020 people started filling out the questionnaire. Exactly 1,021 were patient enough to go through all the questions we had, and that's our final group of respondents, 1,021. I think that we wouldn't be able to approach that many people if we used a different technique. According to Moja.Norwegia, and this number is based on traffic on our website, there is around 200,000 Poles in Norway, which is, if I remember correctly, a bit more than official numbers show. I will start presenting our results with the profile of the average Polish immigrant in Norway. I would like to mark that this profile is of course a bit simplified, and actually it is not based on average, it's based on dominant, which means the most common answer to a question. So, The average Polish person living in Norway is male between 25 and 35 years old. He works in the construction industry or he does physical work of some other kind. He is planning to stay here for good, not excluding the possibility of moving back in some cases. He doesn't really participate in cultural life of Norway. He feels rather well integrated with Norwegian society, and he knows Norwegian, although on a medium or low level. So we forgot about putting mustache on this picture, but sorry for that. The next thing I would like to talk about is age of our respondents. As I mentioned before, the biggest group of people is between 25 and 35 years old. The next biggest group is a group of people between 36 and 44 years old. And the third is a group of people between 45 and 60 years old. As we can see here, it's only 2% of people who are not in typical working age, meaning that in theory, 98% of people are able to work to support themselves. It also means that they can spend the money they earn. And in theory, they make a group of people with big potential in terms of stimulating and positive influence to the Norwegian economy. The next issue, which is probably one of the most important things we were trying to check, let's say, with our research, is a level of Norwegian language among our respondents. This is not a very professional thing, but before we started conducting our research, I couldn't get rid of certain expectations, meaning that I had this image in my head of people, Polish people, who rather are not very good in speaking Norwegian. And I was really very pleased to see that I was wrong, apparently. It turns out that 90% of Polish people can speak Norwegian at least a little bit. As we can see here, 11% of Polish people can speak Norwegian fluently. 35% of people can speak Norwegian quite well. 44%, and that's the most common answer, can speak Norwegian but only a little. And 10% can't speak Norwegian at all. And this number makes me very happy because, as I said before, it means that it is not bad, to put it this way. Excuse me for a second. Yes, the other thing about language I would like to say is participation in the course, language course. It turns out that 67% of our respondents have participated in such a course or still do participate in one. 23% haven't, but is going to do so in the future. And 10% haven't participated in language course, and what is more, they do not intend to do so. We asked this last group of people of reasons why they do not want to participate in course, and it turns out that two main reasons were lack of money and lack of time. Although 2% of them said that they actually don't think they have to know the Norwegian language, apparently they think that there is no point in learning the language. We also asked them who organized the language course they attended, and most of people said that it was themselves, meaning that they attended the course in a private language school. 17% said it was their school or university, 15% said it was their employer, and 19% said it was NAF or other institution of that kind. We can also speak of different forms of language, and it turns out that Polish people feel most comfortable with reading in Norwegian, while the thing that is most problematic for them is writing in Norwegian. We also observed pretty obvious, or at least not very surprising, relationship between level of language and length of residency, and of course it turns out that the longer people live here, the better the language gets. It also turned out that these who can speak Norwegian well, they are more interested in following current events concerning Norway. Among these who can speak Norwegian fluently, 63% said that they do follow news concerning Norway, while in the group of people who can't speak Norwegian at all, it was only 21%. Let's go to the next point, planned length of stay. It turns out that only 2% of respondents is for now sure that their stay in Norway is only temporary. 10% of respondents haven't decided yet about their future plans. 17% is planning to stay here longer, although they know for sure that at some point they will get back to Poland. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong direction. 32% wants to stay here longer, but they are still a bit uncertain if they want to stay here forever or if they are going to go back to Poland one day. And 38%, and that was the most popular answer, knows for sure that they want to stay here forever, which in other words means that it won't be that easy to get rid of us. When it comes to length of residency, as you can see here, 6% of people have came to Norway a couple of months ago. 10% have been living here for 6 to 12 months. 46%, and that is the most common answer, have been living here from 1 to 5 years. 34% have been living here from 5 to 10 years, and 4% have been living here for, more than 10 years. These numbers basically confirm what has already been stated, meaning that the biggest wave of migration came here to Norway after 2004, when Poland accessed the European Union. Next issue I'd like to talk about is level of education. 2% of our respondents had only primary education. 44% of them had secondary education, and that was the most popular answer. 12% of them had vocational education, 13 had higher vocational education, and 29, which was the second most popular answer, had higher education. When it comes to the relationship between level of education and line of work, it turns out that among these who had primary, secondary, and vocational education, the most popular line of work was construction industry or physical work of some other kind. While among these two groups with higher education, it was lines of work that might be considered as a bit more prestigious, like human resources, some kind of counseling, IT industry, or oil and gas industry. Yes, now let's move to line of work. Again, not perfectly professional thing to say, but as we could expect, most of people, or like not most of people, that was the most common answer, was that people work in construction industry, and that answer was marked by 28% of respondents. Next popular answer, most popular answer, was physical work of some other kind, marked by 23%. Third group of lines of work, marked here as other, is the one that I mentioned before, meaning human resources, oil and gas industry, IT, counseling, and so on. 7% of Polish immigrants work in administration or office, 6% in education, another 6% in transport, 5% work in catering business, 3% work in automotive industry, and another 3% work with commerce. When it comes to the relationship between line of work and length of stay, it turns out that in almost all of the groups, construction industry and physical work still remain the most popular answers. As mentioned, a bit more prestigious lines of work, amount of people who mark this option increases a bit with length of stay, but not very noticeable, to be honest. Another thing I would like to mention is cultural life. To check cultural life of our respondents, we were asking them about their participation in certain activities, about their frequency of this participation, about the way they feel about themselves as participants in cultural life, as well as their motivation to do so. Right now we will present to you results, answers to our question about participation in certain activities during the last 12 months of our respondents staying here in Norway. The most popular answer was reading a book, thing that was done by 32% of our respondents. The next most popular answer was going to a concert, marked by 18%. 17% of our respondents went to the movies. 16% didn't do any of mentioned activities. 13% went to a gallery, and 4% went to the theater. As we can see here, these activities that are most popular are rather connected to so-called low culture. But the thing that is very important to mention is that we also asked our respondents about their cultural habits before they came to Norway. And this picture looked actually very similar to this one, meaning that going to a gallery or going to the theater, which are more associated with higher culture, were also the least popular answers. So I think it's pretty important to remember that it might not have looked much differently if these people were in Poland. We did ask these who were not very active in cultural life of reasons why they were not participating that much. And most common answers were lack of time and lack of money. Although some of them pointed at lack of knowledge of Norwegian language, as well as lack of cultural offer that could be more interesting or more approachable for immigrants, and especially in this case, Polish immigrants. We also asked people about their level of motivation to participate in Norwegian culture. And it turned out that the most popular answer was medium level. Also, some of positive answers was lower than some of negative answers, which basically means that Polish people residing here in Norway might not be very interested in participating in culture here. Ergo, I think, or I hope to be wrong actually, culture might not be the best thing to base this mutual cooperation on. But it's important to mention that these who were more fluent in Norwegian were much more eager to participate in cultural life of Norway than these who had whose level of Norwegian was a bit lower. The last field I would like to mention, and I will probably have the most thing to say about, is integration. When we were trying to explore this aspect of life, we were asking people about the way they feel about themselves as part of Norwegian society. We asked them about their social networks, about their opinions about Norwegian people, and about the way they feel they are looked at by Norwegians, if you know what I mean. Here we would like to present results and answers to a question if people do feel integrated with Norwegian society. This a bit controversial picture shows us that 90% of people definitely feel integrated into Norwegian society. Just for the record, we do not promote any deviation here. Yes. 32% of people are rather well integrated with Norwegian society. Another 32% had some problems with describing the way they feel about themselves. 21% claim to be rather not integrated with Norwegian society, while 6% claimed to be definitely not integrated with Norwegian society. We run out of slides, but I did not run out of things I would like to say. Let's move to a nicer picture. As we can see here, many of them have problems with describing the way they feel about their own integration, as well as the fact that both rather answers, meaning rather yes and rather not, were pretty popular. And that can indicate that Polish people do have problems with describing their own place here in Norway. They are still a bit uncertain. How do they feel about this place? How do they feel about themselves being here? We did check the relationship between the level of integration and length of stay. And again, not that surprising. It turns out that the longer people live here in Norway, the more integrated they feel. Of course, these who have come here more recently, like people who came here during the last couple of months, for example, they had biggest problems with describing the way they feel or the level of their integration. But it seems kind of obvious since they didn't have much time to get to know people, to get to know the place that well. It also turns out that there is a positive relationship between feeling well integrated and following current events concerning the Norway. Meaning that these who felt better integrated or more integrated were much more interested in what's going on in Norway. When it comes to social networks, first we asked our respondents if they do have any Norwegians at work. Because we want to check if maybe this factor can somehow or cannot influence other features. It turned out that 84% of our respondents do work with Norwegian people, and these people were more eager to say that they were they were well integrated into Norwegian society. They also had a bit more positive attitudes toward Norwegians, and they did feel a bit more, I will go to this question a bit later, but they basically felt seen in a more positive light by Norwegians than these people who did not have any Norwegians at work, or these who did not know, because we also had answers like that. 70% of these who do work with Norwegian people maintain some kind of social contact with them after work. Some of them claim that this contact is only sporadic, some of them say that it's quite often. But almost every 10th person claimed to have Norwegians met at work among their closest friends. We also asked people about Norwegian friends they met outside of work environments, and it actually turned out that it's more or less half and half, meaning that half of people did have some friends, some Norwegian friends met outside of work, at least one, and half of them didn't. Both having Norwegian friends at work and having Norwegian friends outside of work was actually influencing the way people felt about their level of integration with Norwegian society. Meaning that these who had more contact, more social contact with Norwegians, or these who had more friends, more Norwegian friends, felt more integrated into Norwegian society. They had more positive attitudes toward Norwegians and so on. But what is interesting is that the fact of having Norwegian friends met outside of workplace seemed to have more influence on these things that I mentioned than having Norwegian friends met at workplace. Maybe it is because they kind of had additional link to Norwegian society that was something outside of workplace only. Also probably becoming friends with people met outside of work require a bit more effort, and maybe that's the reason why it turned out to be more important. We also asked people what they think that Norwegians think about Polish people. We decided to divide this issue into two questions, and first we asked people what they think of Norwegians' attitudes towards people as members of Norwegian society. And most of answers were rather positive, although amount of people who were a bit uncertain about this issue was also big. When we asked them to evaluate Norwegians' opinions about Polish people as workers, these answers also were very positive, but what we noticed was that amount of people who had problems with answering this question was much smaller than the amount of people answering the first question. As well, amount of positive answers was bigger, while negative answers was smaller, which basically made us conclude that Polish people may feel a bit more better about themselves or more secure about their position here in Norway as workers or co-workers than as members of Norwegian society. To be fair, we also asked Polish people about their opinions about Norwegian people, and to make it more comparable, we also asked two questions: what they think of Norwegian people as people, and what they think about Norwegians as workers. And here, it turned out that in both situations, answers were rather positive, with this difference that when people were talking about Norwegians as workers, they were a bit less enthusiastic when they were talking about Norwegians as people, as members of the same society, and so on. So that is pretty interesting, and I would be very glad to have a chance to find out why is it so that we feel that we are more valued as workers, while at the same time we think that Norwegians are more valuable as people. If I was about to sum up our research, I would probably have to use a pretty well-known fact, truism even, and say that knowing the language and being familiar with people, in this case Norwegians, even having Norwegians among friends, does help, meaning that it makes people feeling more comfortable and more integrated into Norwegian society. Maybe some of them do not want to be integrated. Maybe they would prefer staying within their own group. Maybe they are comfortable with this situation. That was our huge mistake, actually, not to ask people about that. But then again, we used the power of common sense, and we thought that being integrated, feeling familiar, feeling safe, is probably better for both immigrants and from Norway's point of view, to put it this way. Because, as I said before, common sense would say that feeling well increases motivation to have a job, to maybe have a better job after some time, to participate in culture, to participate in social life, and so on and so on. And I would assume that more active participation of Polish people in life here in Norway, both when it comes to work life and when it comes to cultural life and when it comes to social life, can only have positive results. Yes, I think that would be it. Thank you very much. There is one more thing I forgot to mention. There was a report in English available outside, although it's very short and kind of initial version, I would say, but all these who gave us their emails will receive a bit more extended and I hope a bit more professional reports in Norwegian.
Thank you very much, Jolanta. And please take the report and the infographic. You will find it both here and outside. Our next session is going to focus on a picture of Polish people in Norwegian media. And with me I will have Ingrid Brekke, a correspondent from Aftenposten in Berlin in 4 years. Now you've moved back to Norway. But we are interested in Poland. I've heard that you started to learn Polish too. Is it true? You don't have to say anything in Polish now. Please welcome. And Mr. Jakub Godzimirski from Norwegian Institute of Foreign Studies. Please. Is it better? Please take some water also if you want. I saw it just now. The idea to have this panel discussion started with, actually with myself. I've been living here in Norway more than 20 years and I've been previously also working as a journalist. And everybody who's been living here for a while, we can see that the picture of the Poland we know from Poland and the picture of the Poland presented here in Norway, there are two different pictures. There's a gap between the two Polands. And I would like to talk a little bit about that. But first I would like to ask you, Jakub, you've been living here also for more than 20 years. And how has the picture of Polish people in Poland changed during the 90s and the last years after 2004?
I think it's important to understand that the picture is a kind of dynamic thing. When I came to Norway in '87, the situation was completely different from what we have today. There has been a lot of there has been very deep change in the Polish politics at home, which has also influenced the image of Poles in Norway, and then the whole relationship changed. In 1999, Poland became a NATO member, which meant that we became allies. In 2004, Poland became the member of the European Union, which meant that Poles got access to the Norwegian labour market, and this started this huge inflow of Poles to Norway. And this had to change the image as well, because you relate to a group of people living in your country in a different manner when they are, for instance, like between 5,000 and 10,000 people of Polish origin, which was the situation on the eve of the EU enlargement, and then you experience a kind of inflow of a new group of migrants who are much more visible in the landscape. So this was one of the factors that has influenced this image. And then we have to understand that the economic dimension of the Polish-Norwegian relationship has changed. To say, for instance, when I came to Norway, the average wage in Poland was between 20 and 25 US dollars per month, not per day, not per hour.
What was that?
20-25 US dollars at the black market exchange rate. Today, the economic motivation for coming to Norway is still there, but not as big as it used to be 20-25 years ago. So I think that all those issues have contributed to changing the image of Poland. 25 years ago, it was mostly an idea of Poles being very skillful strawberry pickers. Today, it's an idea of Poles being very skillful construction workers. I think in years to come we will see the growth of another group of Poles people, for instance, coming from the second generation of Poles moving to Poland moving to Norway after the EU enlargement, and we will probably see similar situation to the one that is characteristic of, for instance, the Pakistani diaspora. We have seen Minister of the Norwegian government of Pakistani origin, so I don't exclude completely the situation that in some 10, 15, 20 years time we will see also some people of Polish origins very high on the Norwegian social range.
I agree with you, and I also think that there's more and more articles about Polish workers and the impact of Polish people on Norwegian economics. But still, if you search on the net, most of the articles in Norwegian newspapers are not about culture and about how great Polish people are, but it's about alcohol smuggling, it's about criminality, it's about, well, what should I say, car accidents. Why is that so, Ingrid?
Unfortunately, this is also part of how news are generally made. That it's always the negative things and the dramatic things and the crime rates and stuff like that. We are more concerned about that. I think that's actually the main answer, because I don't think, as a Norwegian, I don't think that the general image of Polish people in Norway are that they are criminal. I think it's like they are very good workers and they're very religious. This is like the main, and these are not, it's very limited, but it's not a bad image. And I think if you look at what sort of, like the Roma people from Romania, they have the biggest headlines, the most coverage, and that's all negative. So this is sort of what the media is like, and I don't think Polish people should feel that they have a negative image because of this, because it's not true. And it's very important.
Okay. Yes, please.
If I may add something, I think that when thinking about Poles in Norway, we should think in terms of sizes. Meaning that we have to do with the situation where we have a city of, let us say, 200,000 people living in the city, living next to another group of people as well. And if we were to follow the news from a city of 200,000, with population of 200,000 people in Poland, for instance, we would also discover that the picture presented in media is not necessarily the real one. Media, as Ingrid has rightly underlined, are very much preoccupied with things spectacular and special. So there is a long discussion going on to what extent one can rely on the image presented in media as a kind of reflection of reality. This is not necessarily the case. So this is also very much the same thing with the image of Poles in Norway. Norwegian media are mostly preoccupied with things specific and special, and this is also somehow reflected in the image of Poles.
I think it's always different to look at your country from outside than when you live in your own country and read your own newspapers. And Ingrid, you've been living in Berlin in 4 years. So I'd just like to ask you shortly, how was the image of Norway seen from Berlin?
It's also very simple. It's beautiful nature, very expensive, welfare state. These are the things people connect with Norway, and it's also it's very positive, but it's also very limited. And in the beginning, I always tried to explain to Germans and other Europeans that, oh, we also have our problems. But I just stopped, because in comparison with the rest of Europe, it doesn't make any sense, actually. But we would also like to tell people that we also have culture and music and high technology, but it really doesn't work that way. These are the problems with national images. And we should all just be happy we're not Romania. I mean, it's like the images are there, and they are changing. As you said, they are really changing all the time. And I think the image of Poland and Polish people in Norway are two different things. But especially the image of what I know more about is the image of Poland in Europe. Because when I lived in Berlin, it's very close to Poland, and the Germans are, of course, very concerned about the neighbor country, which they view extremely positive. And they have really worked hard on coming to terms with Poland about the war and about everything. And this is, of course, from both sides. They have been like Germany has been also supporting Poland in the EU, and as a journalist, to see how Poland has been rising in the EU system, and as a European country, it's extremely impressive. I mean, with democracy, with a low level of corruption, with
mixed opinions when it comes to that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you only relate to the statistics, and you have to compare with other post-communist countries, of course you can't compare to France or Britain, but I mean, if you look at the post-communist countries and you think about it's 25 years, it's not very, or 24 even, it's not a very long time in these terms. I think everyone is extremely impressed. And when I go to Poland and I talk to Polish people and I tell them, oh, I love being in Poland, I love the food, I love you have so much interest in history, beautiful cities, and I'm also very impressed about how the EU money is being spent, because it's not like just receiving money and that's it. You have to really, and the Polish people are all, why are you interested? Why?
Why? I want to know.
They can't really believe it.
What was your first meeting with Poland?
and maybe for me it's, I mean, it's one thing is the journalist part, which is more like, of course there are different opinions, but it's more professional based. But then of course it's also the personal feeling of being there. And maybe it's also that I got this impossible task to cover Germany and 9 other countries, I think, Central Europe, and I didn't know anything. And I just started, and Poland was the easiest one, and it was the one with the best atmosphere. I had this feeling that part of the American dream was still alive, in the sense that people thought that if they only tried and worked hard enough, they would regain their position in Europe, and they would succeed as individuals. And that's probably also why a lot of you are here today, because this idea of taking their fate in their own hand. And it's probably very unfair, because this has also a little bit to do with the political regimes, and the other country I traveled a lot in was Hungary, which is sort of going the other direction now, in my opinion. So the contrast maybe also made me become this, as in Norway we have this saying, friend of Norway, Norgesvenn. And I'm sort of the friend of Poland, I feel, because it's not that I know a lot and I never lived there and don't understand the language and anything. But what I've seen has made me want to come back and learn more.
Well, thank you. Great words. I would like to come a little bit back to the Norwegian everyday reality. A few months ago, I found myself calling several journalists in Norway on behalf of Polish-Norwegian Chamber of Commerce, talking to them and about the story, which I thought was very interesting, about the story about the succeeding businessmen in Norway. And I've been talking to many journalists in different newspapers saying, okay, I know that you have to cover the crisis, and you have to cover the conflict, and you have to cover things happening, actual accidents and stuff, but you know, there are many people in Norway who really succeed. And I know a couple of them from the Chamber of Commerce who really establish themselves as a businessman in Norway. Wouldn't it be an interesting story to show the differences between the Polish and the Norwegian market? What do they do? Nobody was interested. They thought the story was good, but they thought that nobody would like to read it, really. And then I started to think, can we as a Polish community do something ourselves? Like Mojanorwegia, it's a great channel for, you know, taking control of the picture of ourselves, instead of waiting for the media. Yeah.
I had a very interesting experience some years ago when I discovered, for instance, that the third biggest taxpayer in Norway was, in fact, a Polish businessman who got a contract on one of the oil rigs in the northern sea, and probably had a very bad tax advisor, because he paid something like 60 million Norwegian crowns in tax to Norway, meaning that he didn't manage to somehow find some tax loopholes in the system. But it was a very positive. It was a very positive experience, because he was presented as one coming to Norway to do business and one paying his own taxes, which was not necessarily the case with all those Norwegian financial tycoons. So I think this is one of the ways of making broader population aware of the fact. I think also that when discussing the issue of images, pictures, it's important to understand that media present a very simplified picture, and then this has also something to do with what I would like to term as mental inertia, meaning that we all have some ideas and images about the others, Poles about Norwegians, Norwegians about Poles, and those images not necessarily follow the real developments, meaning that there are many people in Norway still thinking about Poland in terms of Poland 20 years ago or 25 years ago. They don't see the progress that has been made in Poland over the last 25 years. We still also have a very simplified picture of who Norwegians are and what is the relationship with, for instance, nature and culture and so on and so on. So I think it's really important to work hard on making those images and pictures and stereotypes more close to the reality.
When we talked together yesterday, you said that it will take a generation. People have to find out how to deal with the society. They have to find their own ways. Day-driven will have a totally different impact on. Can't we do something else? Some quick fix? Any suggestions? You have a suggestion? Yes?
I know a few journalists and the way they are thinking. I think the problem is that writing about steady going, the good life is quite boring.
Well,
the reason they write about the bad situation is because it has a drama in it and a story. So if you find positive
drama.
Yes, where it is something brilliant, sudden turn of fate, and something going on.
Okay, get inspired there, people.
Yes, then it will be written. Yes.
You think it's going the right way?
Yes, I do.
Yes,
And I was very positively surprised, I think a month ago, and my newspaper on Saturday had a page about Polish food. And I thought, like the recipes. We always have these in the weekends. So it was like, just like sometimes we have Thai food. This weekend we have Polish food, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I think this is the sort of really small steps that are small signs that things are changing. And of course, because there are so many people living here, there are also a lot of Norwegian people who meet Polish people and they get interested. In the food, maybe I also know someone who, because they had a Polish lady cleaning their house, she invited them, and the whole family traveled to some extremely tiny village somewhere in Poland, and they were like, wow, it was brilliant. So these sort of small things are happening all the time, and it will slowly change. But it takes a lot of time, and I think you are very right in that most Norwegians have this image of Poland that is very old, and we see all of Eastern Europe as this grey, somewhere everything is the same, and it's very poor and boring and uninteresting.
All my Norwegian friends say like, wow, when they come to Gdansk and Warszawa.
Exactly. That's what happens when Norwegians actually go to Poland. They react somewhat like me. And it's like, wow, and it's so easy to be
Why didn't you tell us?
It's so, yeah. And also because the EU money well spent, and you can see that this renovated, beautiful old part of cities, and the roads are much better than in Norway, and all, yeah. So if you only, and I think because of that, and because there are a lot of cheap flights, Norwegians have this, now it's, I think Berlin are sort of taking over from London, and people are always looking for where should they go next, and I would not be surprised if maybe Warsaw, I mean Krakow is something different, it's a different sort of tourism. But that more people would like to go to Warsaw, I think, because it's the same sort of exciting city as Berlin. It's, yeah.
I have a friend who said that Warsaw is his new Berlin after
exactly.
this fall. Jakob, you would like to?
I think that when talking about the relationship between individuals and ethnic groups and media, it's important to underline that the best thing that can happen to any individual and any ethnic group is not to end up on the first page of media, no matter Norwegian or Polish, but because it really means that everything works rather smoothly, and that the best thing that could happen is to namely have a page in media devoted to things like Polish cuisine or something like that, because it really means that the relationship between those two groups has somehow been normalized.
It's going in the right direction. We are running out of time. I would like to thank you, and I've been thinking now that we are really in exciting times with the social media, which makes everybody possible to take control over the channels. So I mean, I love Aftenposten, but it's not the only true story not the only true stories being told there. Now everybody can tell their own stories, and I think Mojanorwegia, which is organizing the seminar today, is doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Short break, so we can talk a little bit together, take a cup of tea, and we'll see each other here in 20 minutes.
Dlatego właśnie zaznaczyłam na początku. Właśnie z tego tytułu, że